Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down Game 2 between the Celtics and the Pacers, in which we saw the Celtics get a 16-point W, go up 2-0 in that series. Haliburton goes down in the third quarter with an injury. That is going to be a back blower. But that's going to be a backbreaker, for the Pacers. And we'll see if they can recover from that, how serious of a lower leg injury it is. He has dealt with a lower leg injury in the past this season, and he has not come out the same since then. We'll see exactly if he's able to bounce back or not in the future of that series, though. In this segment here, we're going to transition out of basketball, do a little bit of talk about the NCAA. And this is a story that is really interesting to me. The NCAA, they have officially settled in the House versus NCAA case. We covered that story a little bit and what it meant for the smaller conferences earlier this week. You can go check that out if you are interested. I believe we covered it on Tuesday. You'd have to go check. I don't remember. But in this segment, we're going to talk more broad about the NCAA organization as a whole and how this affects it. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a question, a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave it in the comments. Go ahead and leave it in a tip or donation. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I love to hear from you guys, so if you have anything you would like to say, go ahead and put it in that chat for me. But like I said, this is a topic that is really intriguing to me, and I've titled this "The Death of Amateurism" because when you look at the NCAA as a whole, you can go back 100+ years, or about 100 years, to the creation of what we would call the modern NCAA, and it has been built on this idea of amateurism. This idea of, we don't have to pay these players, this is how it works, they are students. But now with this settlement, this House versus NCAA settlement going through and officially being settled, the NCAA and these Power 5 schools are the only ones that had to agree to this, and we kind of went over the ramifications of that in our other segment on Tuesday of how the smaller conferences don't get a voice on this either. But now they get the go-ahead to pay their players. The budget, I believe, is around $20 million. And people are framing this as, hey, it saved college sports. They would have gone bankrupt, which, the amount of lawsuits that are being lined up and how this protects them for future lawsuits, you might be right. They might be right. This might have protected them, might have protected the organization of the NCAA from completely collapsing. But it hasn't. Maybe monetarily it has. But when you look at if you go and you strip the NCAA of everything that's outside and you go to its core pillar, the core pillar of the NCAA throughout its entire history has been this term amateurism. And that is gone now. What they have done is they have just taken out the support beam from the entire house that is the NCAA, and we're going to see if it can stand. We're going to see if how big the NCAA has grown and the support of football, of just football paying its players, or these football and basketball, these revenue generating sports, can keep the house of the NCAA afloat, because it stands on amateurism, and it has. And now that blanket, that veil of amateurism is gone, there is not a lot left to protect the NCAA. It's a house without support now, and it's something that's good, right? I want to come out here before I get too far into my rant and say that this is a good thing. This is a good change. Pay the players that deserve to get paid. They're out there, they're making money for your university in some instances, and they are, doing their best here, getting notoriety out there. We talked a little bit about how sports can get your university, the name of your university out there, and everything like that. So we'll see how this affects that. The smaller schools we talked about earlier, but amateurism as a whole is now gone. The NCAA has to, and it's patchwork. It's patchwork right now. They don't have laws along every state or federally. It's there's certain laws in certain states of how you can handle it, and it's going to be completely patchwork until something gets passed federally or by the NCAA outlining the rules of how you can pay players. Because if you start a system like this, you have to start to draw up CBAs because they don't want the NCAA does not want the universities to pay their players directly. They don't want them to be employees. They want them to be students. And again, it's a good thing that they're getting paid. It is. They deserve to get paid. They're putting their bodies on the line for an organization bigger than themselves. Most of these players aren't going to get to the next level to get paid. And it's a good thing that they have the ability to get paid at this point. But what the NCAA doesn't want and what they need to figure out is if they're making them salaried employees or not, because that opens up a whole new can of worms. How are you going to pay the 80th man on the roster? Does the 80th man on the roster get a check just because number one is getting this NIL money now? You're allowed to pay them. How is this going to work? Is it going to be NIL? Is it going to be employee salary? There's a lot more questions than answers that are out right now. But what has been stricken right now is the entire uh, is the entire idea of amateurism, which has been built is what the NCAA built its entire structure on from the beginning of its organization. Uh, this is what this is the biggest change. This is the biggest change in the history of the NCAA, and we'll see if they can survive this. There are many scenarios in which the NCAA just does not exist in 10 years after this. And this is a good stepping point. This is a good start for change, but it doesn't guarantee that it continues to exist. And it's something that we need to keep our eyes on. It has this settlement protects them from future lawsuits, which gives them a little bit of blanket of security to fix this emergency situation. But there's a lot more questions than answers. Like Kelsey is saying here in the YouTube comments, how many of the coaches get paid? The coaches get paid a lot of money. They get paid millions and millions of dollars. It's a huge undertaking for these universities. It's a huge financial undertaking for these universities, especially the smaller ones. They have to pay off this $2.7 billion settlement, and then they have this whole new financing ability now, which sports, like I've said, are a great way to get your university's name out there. For instance, March Madness. These small schools that go on runs. Florida Gulf Coast back in, what was that, 2015. UMBC when they beat Virginia in 2018. These schools, they got their names out there through athletic programs, and it's good for your university, and it opens up a whole new can of worms. It's very exciting. It's a brand new time, and all these schools need to adapt, and the NCAA also needs to adapt. This is a groundbreaking change in the NCAA, and I'm very, very, very excited to see exactly how they are how they want to handle this, how they're going to handle this. If it were up to me, I don't know if I would give them salaries per se, because again, that's kind of what is different from college levels as opposed to professional levels. I am all in favor of NIL. The NIL is a system that I've been pushing for a while. Name, image, likeness. If there's a company that wants to pay them to be in commercials, if they want to get money for their name, for their images, for advertisements, for signing stuff, let them get money for that. But I think it just gets way too complicated for how big of an organization the NCAA is and how different it is between a school like Alabama and a school like James Madison or a school like UMBC, that has completely different levels of funding for their programs. It's not just, you're not going to be able to do an all-encompassing thing for a Texas A&M that gets hundreds of millions of dollars from their boosters every single season, and a Harvard who probably doesn't get that much for athletic funding. There's not one rule that's going to fix this. So I think as far as paying players from the university, it gets a little complicated. But NIL, I'm a big fan of. So there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be figured out. But amateurism is dead now. And that, like I said in the beginning of this, is the fundamental structure that the NCAA was built on. And we'll see if they can evolve, because if they can't, they're going to fall. And we'll see what picks up the pieces, or if they're able to keep it going. I'm very excited for the future of college sports. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on any of this. Anything involving college sports, everything is going to change. So very, very exciting times. But in our next segment, we're going to move out of college sports, move on to the ice, talk a little bit about a double overtime game that took place last night, game one of the Western Conference Finals between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. We saw double overtime. Uh, so, very, very excited. We will be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.